Interviewing. Gosh, don't you wish there was the perfect set of questions or the perfect method by which to interview? I know. Just like there aren't any perfect candidates, there are no perfect people. There's no way in heaven that anyone's going to tell you how to interview someone or even interview, you be the person being interviewed. There's no possible way that there are guarantees. There just aren't. My name's Pandy Pridemore. I'm a consultant here in the Cincinnati market. You're listening to The Human Resource. And, again, I've been doing this for, over 40 years. And the candidates themselves are changing. What they're looking for, what they need. But so are we. So are we, the ones that are doing the interviewing. Our needs are changing. Our desires of what we're looking for and what we're interested in, they're changing as well. So what I thought I'd do is let's go back to the basics. If you've never been trained on how to interview, if you've never been taught what, from a compliance perspective, what you can and cannot do, you need to listen to the show. Let's start from the beginning. And it's interesting. Everybody goes, well, I know not to ask if they have children, and I know not to ask them, what their age is. Well, maybe you do, but does your team? Do the individuals that you involve in that interviewing process, have they been trained? When was the last time you sat down with them and said, hey, I'm going to sit in on this interview with you because I just want to get a feel for how the conversation flow is going. It's a phenomenal idea because that's kind of how this material got put together. What I suggest for clients is before you even begin to think about interviewing, if you've got someone already in the position, you need to go to them and make sure you understand what they're doing. How many times, I cannot tell you how many times I have found a job description that was so antiquated and so off base in relationship to what is actually being done today and what will be done tomorrow. And so you got to start there. You got to make absolutely sure that you know what you're interviewing for. And then make sure that everybody on the team, I don't care who it is, even if the owner is going to be interviewing, make sure that you're all speaking the same language. You're all using the exact same title. You're all using the exact reference of who that person will be working with, what the hours will be, what the requirements are going to be in terms of where the work's going to be done. You have to have that groundwork because something will throw you off otherwise. And you're going to start looking at skill sets or competencies that aren't going to address your needs. So start with that. Make sure that you've got a clear vision. And the current team, ask them, get them involved. Even if they're not going to be doing the interviewing, help them to understand how important it is that you have a clear vision of what the needs of the business are. There are so few candidates out there. I'm interviewing for somebody for my company now, and I'm not finding the perfect person. Oh my goodness, no. And I understand. I knew that going into it. I knew exactly going in that I was going to have to do most of the training, or I'm going to have to polish what they know or what they have been exposed to. And you have to do the same thing. You've got to understand that. So when you do finally get to sit down with them, how do you start the conversation? And it's interesting. I've got one client that has started this new screening program, and I am not kidding you. Their interviewing process, just to get past the application into, trying to decide if they want to make an offer, it takes over 7 hours. They have panel interviews. The applicant themselves has to complete this survey of questions that takes. Some of the candidates have told me they literally wanted to just walk away from it because it took an hour and a half to complete. and then sitting down with these panel interviews with all these multiple people, and they're like 2 hours long a piece, you need to really be careful and decide if that's really essential for your company. Is that kind of an environment and experience truly going to identify the people that you need for your jobs? If again, it's if you can make it complicated, or you can make it as simple as you want. When we sit down and actually talk to somebody, make sure you've got an application or a really good resume. Don't go just verbal. Many times we make agreements. We just shake hands with somebody on the street and go, "Oh, you're a friend of so-and-so. Yeah, I've got a job. Come on over." And that isn't the success rate that you want. Do an interview and sit down and talk to them about their relative experience as well as what your needs are. It was interesting. I was I actually witnessed an interview, and there were 3 people interviewing this candidate. And at the end, the owner came to me and she goes, "Well, how'd they do?" I said, "Well, they did all the talking, and the candidate had absolutely no opportunity to participate." Ask yourself, is that happening in your company? Are the people you're interviewing have an opportunity to talk? Do they get a chance to respond? Do they get to share what their experiences are? Can they relate what they've done to what you need completed or what you have coming up? I ask every client of mine, every candidate of mine, this is what I need. Help me understand what you've done in the past that would convince me or lead me to believe that you would be successful doing that for me. And it's an open-ended question, but it also helps them either say, "Oh, you know what, I've never done anything like that," or, "Well, yeah, and this is how I handled it." Because you don't want to know what they can do or what they would do. You want to know what they've already done and what they're capable of doing based on that experience, right? So you're going to find out their skills and competencies. You're going to find out what their training's been. You're going to find out how they've applied the education that they've received to what we actually need, because we're always going to train, always, hopefully. You're going to find out their availability. And gosh, guys, always get that in writing. Always get their availability in writing. That's one of the biggest bumps and bruises for more manual labor type positions, is individuals get hired and then all of a sudden they come in with these very tight availabilities. I need to leave at 3:30, or I can only work every other Friday. Get their availability in writing. It's nice to get their goals and expectations, but remember, once you get into your company, their goals are going to change. Their expectations may change, and that's totally, totally okay. Talk about why they're leaving their current employer or why they're interested in your company. I'm really, really funny about individuals, about them checking out my website or watching the podcasts or getting to know me. I'm really funny about that. And if I'm interviewing for a client, that's one of the first things I ask is, "So how did you hear about the posting? How did you hear about this opportunity? And have you looked at their website? What can you tell me about this company and why you would be interested in working for them?" If somebody hasn't checked out my website, if they haven't checked out my client's website, they're just interviewing with me just to be going through the exercise. They're not interested in knowing that I may not be interested in talking to them. Yeah, I'm a little tough. Find out what their organizational skills are. But again, maybe you don't need that for the job. And then talk about what your expectations are over the next 30, 60, 90 days. Notice everything that we just kind of reviewed there is truly job specific. You want to keep that conversation as focused on the job as possible. Yes, it's sometimes nice to find out if they watched the Reds game last night. And yes, It's okay to start by talking about the weather, or, have you ever been in this building before, or small talk. It's wonderful to get them comfortable. It's essential that you get them to trust you and to know that you're there for them. But here's a catch. Make sure you don't have your cell phone with you. And you have every right, if you're interviewing someone, to tell them that I would appreciate if you would put your cell phone away. It's okay if you take notes. It's okay if they take notes. But be very careful what your notes say. I had to remind a client here not too long ago, don't write on the application. Don't write on the resume and expect to keep it. Because quite frankly, more often than not, someone untrained, someone who's not educated on how to do a proper interview and all the compliance aspects around it, will write something really stupid. Like, well, that's the guy who had the cane and the gray hair. Or she's the woman who had the 2 children that she talked about with the soccer game. Or I always like the one, well, I don't know. I just don't think he looks the part because he had long hair, and he probably would look better if he put it in a ponytail. I mean, those things, guys, those things can get you into trouble. Don't write on the applications. Don't write on the resumes. If your folks need some kind of material to take notes, then I would make it a very controlled document. I've got a candidate evaluation form here for those of you who are watching the show. And notice it's really plain. It talks about strengths, weaknesses, pros, cons. It has nothing in here about how many children are in her family, or how often she goes to Pilates, which is so unjob related. This form here, again, is another candidate evaluation form that talks about how were the candidate's communication skills during the interview. How much interest did the candidate show in the position and the company? Did the candidate demonstrate that their answers with a high degree of initiative? How much interest did the candidate show in the culture of the company and how the team works? Absolutely nothing about whether they have a car to drive, what neighborhood they live in, what year they graduated from college. And again, this is important because what governing bodies are overseeing interviewing and the problems that can come out of that, the Department of Labor. Title VII protects individuals. The EEOC, ADA, they protect them even in the interviewing process. There's risks, and you don't want to cross those risks. So what can you talk about? Well, talk about the list that we just discussed there. Even talk about essential work functions. Look, this job's going to be on site here in the office, or, well, we need you to wear steel-toed shoes. We would need you to have your PPE available. We would need you to have your own tools. Whatever is specific to the job, keep the conversation there. Stay away from family or marital details, age, anything having to do with age. Comments on religion, ethnicity, national origin, color, race. Stay away from comments regarding criminal activity. Remember, ban the box is more prevalent than not. And that's understanding that you cannot ask someone prior to an offer about their criminal background. Do not give them background check paperwork as you're taking that employment application. Bad timing. Wrong timing. Questions about reproductive status. New York is huge about this. You are not to ask those kind of questions. Oh, are you willing or interested in expanding your family? Yeah. You just got married. Oh, how soon will you be starting your family? Wrong questions. Don't ask about workers' comp injuries. Don't ask about, have you ever been injured on a job before? Don't ask if they start with a conversation leading towards health issues. roll it back to the job. Please do not expound on those conversations. Roll it back to, this is what is needed for the job. If it's a situation where you need for them to demonstrate that they can lift 50 pounds or that they can climb a ladder, that's different. But don't get details on why he had knee surgery done. Questions regarding current or past compensation. This is a big one. And again, with all the remote workers that we're dealing with right now, but believe it or not, Ohio doesn't restrict the discussion of compensation, but Cincinnati does. And many municipalities around the country have those same kind of restrictions for talking about what someone is currently making. This all changed a couple years ago when the Equal Pay Initiative started sweeping the nation. So I tell my clients, if you want to know about compensation, ask what they will refuse. And I know that sounds odd, but you know what you're willing to pay. And if you give them that range, fantastic. But if you're not willing to give them that range and you want to make sure that you're still in the right ballpark, I mean, obviously, if you can only offer $50,000 and this person says, well, I won't take an offer less than $200,000, that conversation just ended. You wish him well and move on to the next candidate. But if they say, well, I really won't accept an offer less than 49 and you were willing to pay 50, you're in the same ballpark. Compensation is a difficult conversation, but I'm encouraging clients to now have that discussion early. Don't go through 7 hours of interviewing and fall in love with somebody and then find out that you're $30,000 difference on what they're expecting and what you can pay. It's a valid question, and I call it professional courtesy. Go ahead and throw it out there. In fact, throw out anything that's job related. Because again, the more they know about what you're looking for, the better you think or you can assume the fit's going to be there. And encourage them to interview you. Some questions you won't be able to answer. But the more questions they ask, the more they're engaged. There are a lot of things we can do, and there are a lot of things we can't. There are a lot of things we can control, and even more that we can't. But I'm telling you, if you follow some of these rules and these guidelines, you will not be as disappointed as if you didn't. My name is Pandy Pridemore. Thanks for coming. Thanks for listening to The Human Resource.